Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle and I am an Atlanta gardener that gardens in now what is zone 8A. If you haven't seen, there are updated zones and I used to say that I was in zone 7B/8A. But with the newest zoning updates, I can now say that I am an 8A gardener. So welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a really cool shrub that I don't see in a lot of gardens. It is a blooming shrub for a shady spot. It is evergreen and it is native. I feel like it checks all of the boxes that people are looking for these days. So let's talk about Kalmia latifolia. Kalmia latifolia is also known as mountain laurel, and this has been on my garden wish list for many years. I have looked for it locally and haven't been able to find it, and I've learned a little bit about Kalmia latifolia in my hunt for finding it, so I want to share some of that with you, and then we'll go over and I'll show you where I'm planting it and how I'm planting it. So Kalmia latifolia is also known as mountain laurel. It's not closely related to laurels, but you know how common names are, they don't always make a ton of sense. If you are on the East Coast and you are looking for native plants, Kalmia latifolia is one that has a native range from about southern Maine to northern Florida. So it is a very wide native range, and you can find this along rocky slopes or mountainous forests, kind of like the name mountain laurel implies. So I'm going to be planting this mountain laurel and trying to mimic the environment that it likes the most. It likes those mountainous rocky soils, so I'm going to be adding in some rock substrate to help mimic that soil. And then the soil acidity that it likes best leans a little bit acidic, which in Georgia we have soil that leans more acidic, so I think I'm all set there.
If you don't know the acidity of your soil, but you have a hydrangea in your garden that blooms blue, that's a pretty good indication that you have acidic soil. These types of hydrangeas are pH indicators, and the bluer that they bloom, the more acidic your soil is. If they bloom pink, that's a sign that you have more basic soil. So that's a quickie way that you can tell how acidic your soil is.
Another name for mountain laurel is actually spoonwood. So it's said that from the wood of the mountain laurel, Native Americans made spoon, giving it the name spoonwood. It's also said that they used this plant to create an analgesic. So they would crush up the leaves to use it to relieve pain and cuts. The leaves are toxic to humans and deer, so this is a deer-resistant shrub and not one that I would prefer to munch on. And this is one that you can plant if you do have problems with deer. The name Kalmia latifolia, Kalmia comes from the Finnish botanist and explorer who first recorded this plant in the 1600s, and latifolia just means broadleaf. So since 1624, when this was named and discovered by Pierre Kalmi, there have been a number of cultivated varieties that range in size from practically a small tree to dwarf or smaller varieties. There are ones that bloom white and pink and any gradient combination of white to pink and pink to darker pink. Really beautiful. It was so hard to pick just one variety to grow. I ended up going with nipmunk. And this variety gets to about 5 feet tall to 5 feet wide, which was about the size that I was looking for to add over to the garden. So like I shared earlier, I've been looking to add Kalmia latifolia to my garden for a very long time. One, because of those beautiful hydrangea-like blooms that come in the May-June timeframe, and also because of the evergreen and also because of its evergreen properties. The newest branches I find are also very interesting. They're like a bright red color, and then as the wood matures or ages, it gets that gray outery bark. But I just think that's such a really pretty look in a shrub and so interesting, and so I'm really excited to finally be planting these. I ended up finding these from Green Promise Farms, which seems to specialize in a lot of native shrubs and perennials. So if you're into native gardening and into native shrubs, definitely check out their website. Everything came shipped beautifully. And now all I have to do is prepare the planting site. I want to make sure that I'm mimicking its natural habitat as much as I can, because everything that I have learned from my plant nerd friends that are much smarter than me have let me know that Kalmia latifolia, you don't see it sold in many places because it's a bit of a finicky plant. It really wants those rocky soils. It wants to be in a well-draining condition. And I think there's some issues with growing it in containers. So I'm really excited to get this in the ground, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that it is happy in my garden because I would love nothing more than to see this thrive here. So let's get digging.
I'm planting 3 mountain laurels on the slope under the shade of a pretty dense tree canopy, so I think it should be happy here. The slope looks really sparse right now and is in desperate need for some evergreen interest. For comparison, here is what this area looks like around May. You can tell, huge difference. In order to mimic the soil of the native habitat, I am going to be adding 2 things to the soil. First off, permatill. This is a rocky substrate that will increase soil drainage. And then second off, compost. Mountain laurels come from forested areas where leaf litter is falling and decomposing, and so there's much more fertile soil than what I have to offer, so compost will help with that. Although I didn't have to use too much in this project, and you'll see why in just a minute. I say this all the time, I garden in clay soil. I normally don't put too many amendments unless the plant tag itself says requires well-draining soil, or I Google it and I see that well-draining soil is required. You can see the difference right here between my native soil and the soil that this mountain laurel has grown up in. Very, very different. So what I'm aiming to do is to have a soil that's somewhere in the middle. So I like to tip over the can, see how root bound the plant is. As you can see in this case, the majority of the container was loose soil, so I don't have to add much compost. I don't have to dig any deeper of a hole, and I can go ahead and just combine this soil with the permatill and plant away. Another thing that could help with drainage is planting your plants a little bit higher than the soil level. So that's why you can see this mountain laurel is a little bit higher than soil level. That will help with drainage in case we get some wet months. Now just to repeat the process for the other 2 plants. Obviously this time I needed Honey's help as well. Don't you just wish that sometimes you could fast forward yourself doing the chores that you don't like? I think that's the superpower that I would love. The ability to just do things really, really fast.
Okay, so my assistant and I, Honey, are all done planting. I need to get washed up, and I don't mean like this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and water in the plants. And then that's it. I'm not really going to touch them or fuss with them much. I'm hoping that they will use this season to establish. Mountain laurel are actually very slow growers, so I'm not expecting much in terms of growth over the next couple of years. You know the saying, first they sleep, then they creep, then they leap. If these bloom next season, I will be over the moon and be shouting it off the rooftops. So you will definitely see an update if they bloom. But I wanted to thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting my channel. And as always, I will see you in the next video.